Hello, everyone. Welcome along to the F1 show. I'm just going to check that you guys can hear me all right. Let's just see. Can you hear me? Yeah, you can. So that's good. So hello and welcome along to this week's edition of the F1 show. We should be joined by Charlie very soon because there's a lot to dissect from this week of motorsport. We've had a lot to get through with the Formula One Gran Premio di Monaco. Ultimately, didn't result in the best of races at the Circuit de Monaco because really it just wasn't entirely that interesting, was it? Charlie should be joining pretty soon as we speak. I think he's got a few technical issues, so he will be on in a few moments' time. So, yeah, it wasn't the most interesting of races, I have to admit, and I'm a diehard Formula One fan, and I will say that most races are interesting, but that was a bit naff. I do have to say, it wasn't the greatest race. But we start on the British GT at Brands Hatch. Great to see fans back at UK circuits this weekend. I really loved it. I wasn't there myself, but I managed to watch the highlights and I managed to watch some of the F3 events there. And it was a really good event, and I was glad to see as Charlie joins now. Charlie, I was just talking how good it was to see fans back at Brands Hatch this weekend.
Oh, it was amazing, Jack. I have to say as well, I'm sure many people want to get back to motor racing. I've had my second dose of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine today, albeit with a bit of a stiff arm. I am fine. I think the second dose is better, but to see fans back at motor racing, probably most of them vaccinated, this is great. I think Formula One should be definitely having the British Grand Prix with fans this year.
Well, as you've mentioned Formula One, Charlie, that's what we start with then. A bit of a boring Monaco Grand Prix, really. Wasn't the most exciting event, was it?
No, unless your name was Charles Leclerc or Valtteri Bottas from that race.
Let's have a discussion about Valtteri, Charlie. Mercedes, Charlie, have had one of their worst weekends in Formula One in a long time, but they've still managed to break a world record for the longest ever Formula One pit stop, standing at just under 48 hours.
I'll tell you what, we're wearing this T-shirt tonight, so surely I'd feel quite disappointed that Mercedes didn't do that well on Sunday. But yes, a wheel gun issue for Valtteri Bottas on Sunday forced him into retirement.
It meant that
the pit stop took ages.
It meant that the wheel nut got jammed, didn't it? The wheel nut got jammed and they couldn't get it off. Could they have used the hammer, Charlie, and smashed the wheel nut?
I think that would have got potentially violated the rules. I don't know. They might have had hammers they could have used, but yeah, it was very difficult. It's like playing a game of whack-a-mole with a tyre.
It is. I would have a feeling that Michael Massey would like to get involved if they started getting hammers around and throwing them around in the pit lane.
That'd be dangerous, I'm sure.
It certainly would, Charlie. Let's talk about qualifying. That was the most eventful part of the weekend. We didn't actually get an enter Q3 because Charles Leclerc put it in the barriers, broke his drive shaft. We thought it would be the gearbox, but it ended up being the drive shaft, Charlie. That cost him a victory at Monaco.
It did, and I watched the replays of the crash, and I have to say, Leclerc done it. Was Max Verstappen done this a few years ago where he hit the wall, and that was in FP3, and he ruled himself out for qualifying. Leclerc went off Q3. The problem was, Jack, this was when everyone was on personal best laps. Verstappen was actually quickest in, I think, the first two sectors of the lap, and he was on what could have been provisional pole lap, and then obviously Leclerc binned it with 16 seconds to go.
Charlie, all of the top seven said that they could have been on pole until Leclerc put it in the barriers. We'll never find out, will we, who would have been on pole? But if Hamilton was on pole, it would have turned his weekend around. He's lost the championship lead. Mercedes have lost both championship leads now. They had a disastrous weekend.
They did, Jack, and obviously Valtteri Bottas didn't do bad in qualifying, but yeah, in the race, the pit stop went down. And Lewis Hamilton, as I mentioned on Sunday on this live stream here, only 7th. He had a disappointing weekend, lap pace, and in general, I mean, that's a rare position for the 7-time world champion to finish down in 7th place. However, though, he did set fastest lap during the race.
He did, Charlie. That was actually his worst finishing position since Germany 2019.
Yes,
in that wet race, where he also went off and hit the barriers, but he had enough momentum to carry on, Charlie. Interestingly, he hasn't retired now, Charlie, in over 50 races.
Wow, that's incredible. I think, is it Austria 2018, the last retirement he had?
Yes, and he scored points. He scored points in the last 83 of his 84 Formula One Grand Prix that he's finished.
Incredible.
So, who do you put the blame down, Charlie? In that situation, Lewis was saying he could go longer. The team decided to pit him, and he came out behind Perez, Gasly, and Vettel.
Vettel, yeah. Oh, I mean, Jack, I think Mercedes got the strategy wrong. I think Hamilton, when you looked at Sebastian Vettel's pace, he was quicker. He stayed out longer. And I think in Monaco, early pit stops are not good, because if you pit early, you hope for a safety car. Because in Monaco, traffic paradise will not suit you at all. And I'm sure Yuki Tsunoda will probably be expecting the same thing right now, but I'm thinking.
So it was kind of one of those. I was with Lewis. I thought the team made a mistake on that one, calling him. I don't think they should have done it. And obviously that was probably, Charlie, one of their worst 2 laps of the turbo hybrid era, because not only did Hamilton lose 3 positions, Valtteri Bottas also never came out the pit lane.
It was just a rare error from Mercedes that week, and I must admit that they'll be scratching their heads. They've got Baku coming up, I believe, next weekend. So yeah, they've just got to get their heads down for the next race, and it is a street circuit. I think they got more of a chance at Baku because of the straights.
Saying that, Charlie, Hamilton reckons Red Bull have a 6/10 advantage using the flexi wings. Now, we get on to flexi wings in a minute, and let's talk about Mick Schumacher first, Charlie. Had a disappointing weekend, really. He put it in the barriers at Massenet in FP2. He put it in the barriers at Casino Square in FP3, which ruled him out for qualifying through fitness and through the chassis not being ready. Ultimately, Charlie, meant he would be starting last. He started last, but he still finished ahead of Nikita Mazepin.
Yeah, Mick Schumacher's weekend was topsy-turvy. Of course, Jack, you mentioned he went off in FP3, had to miss qualifying for chassis replacement. But yeah, I did watch the overtake on lap 1 down at the hairpin. He was one of the only drivers to make up a place on the opening lap. So I'm sure Nikita Mazepin would give him payback for when he overtook him.
And here's a stat, Charlie, to show how easy it is to overtake in Formula E, or like how good it can be to overtake in Formula E, if you know what I mean. There was more overtakes on the whole of the 45-minute plus 1 lap race in Formula E than there was on the first lap, of the 45-minute plus 1 lap race for Formula E, than there was on the whole 78 laps of the Monaco Grand Prix.
That's crazy.
Right, Charlie, we know F1 is a very political sport, and normally at least once a season we get a political argument. Last season it was the brake ducts for Racing Point. This season, Charlie, we've got one already, the flexi wings. In my view, Charlie, the FIA say that the wings can flex 2 centimeters. Mercedes reckon, Charlie, that the Red Bull wing is flexing 2 inches.
I mean, it's difficult to say on this one. I haven't really been following this that closely, but I've been hearing flexi wings helping Red Bull out massively. I don't know. I heard this could be banned after the Azerbaijan Grand Prix.
It has been it's been disqualified by the FAA from the French Grand Prix. So it can't be used from the French Grand Prix, Charlie. But what Mercedes are saying, with the long straights, Charlie, Red Bull have a very good advantage. Not only do they have a very good advantage, Charlie, is what if one of those wings flies off, that's also a concern to other drivers' safety.
Yeah, definitely. You got to look at pre-season testing when Sergio Perez was driving down the back straight in Bahrain. Just that one of the wings actually fell off his car.
It did. A bizarre incident, Charlie. The engine cover coming off. Red Bull have looked into that and they've designed their engine cover now, so that won't happen again. But those flexi wings, Charlie, they are big. Those rear wings. If that comes off, that's terrifying. If you're a driver behind.
Yeah, it is very terrifying. I mean, it's just a piece of It's a piece of debris, and we all seen what happened with Henry Surtees at 2006 when he got hit by a tyre in a British F3 race. So you got that the halo is there, and its job is to protect the driver from flying debris. And if you just before we move on, if you've seen the 2009 practice session or qualifying session in Hungary, Felipe Massa actually had a spring which was launched into his helmet, and I think quite simply that is why we have the halo today.
Charlie, that was, other than Romain Grosjean, one of the nearest misses, one of the closest times we've come to losing a driver in a Formula One weekend without actually losing the driver itself. Other ones that probably come close, Niki Lauda and Romain Grosjean, definitely at Bahrain. The halo, Charlie, it's only been in the sport for a couple of years, 3 years now. It was highly criticised, but from the fans to the FIA when it first came in. I don't think, Charlie, there'd be anyone up for criticising the halo right now.
No, because it saved drivers' lives. Romain Grosjean was literally in a position last year where he could have died because of that fire. Literally, the fire, it could have burnt him. It could have burnt his body. And it was a miracle that the halo had saved Romain's life from the impact of the crash as well.
I can't help but think, Charlie, if the titanium pole at the front of the halo was not there, the thing that Romain would have made contact with would have been the metal barrier. And I can't see, Charlie, there'd be any way on this earth that a driver could survive going into their head hitting a metal barrier at that speed.
If we didn't have the halo, I think Romain wouldn't have been with us today. I'm honestly, I can't believe I'm getting emotional right now, but that's how I would view it.
It's a serious topic, though, isn't it? The halo being in Formula One, it's definitely done its gods already, and obviously saved Charles Leclerc as well, Charlie, at Spa. When Leclerc landing on top of the Fernando Alonso landing on top of the cockpit. Very scary,
horrible crash. That one, I watched that one a couple of years. That's 2018. That one.
It was. If the halo hadn't have been there again, Charlie, who knows what would have happened to Charles Leclerc?
Yeah, he could have been in trouble from Alonso's flying McLaren. Literally, that's how horrible crashes can be in Formula One. You just got to. That's why the halo's there. It's got to be there for safety reasons. I know people say it looks ugly, but I don't think it does.
There was actually a crash this weekend, Charlie, in the Formula Regional Alpine Series at Monaco. A sport race to Formula One this weekend, where the car, Charlie, was actually balanced on top of the halo of another car.
Jesus Christ, Jesus! I'm actually going to get that up right now. I'm just going to get that up quickly. I'm not sure the crash is. Oh Jesus! I'm gonna literally just looking up the crash now. I can't actually find a photograph of the impact. But yeah, it was
100% trap blockage and straight away a red flag, obviously. But no, going back to the flexi wing situation, Charlie. As I said, if one of those flies off, that. The halo is designed to protect wheels. if it gets high enough, Charlie, and drops down, then it will end up in the cockpit, evidently, because that's not really what the halos decide. Debris falling from above is highly unlikely. Obviously, it can happen, and it probably will happen at some point, I'm going to guess. But Roman's crash, Charlie, it outlined how far we've come in terms of safety, but it also highlighted the areas of concern where we could possibly improve the safety on the fuselage tanks, the fuel cover.
Oh my god! Yeah, I've actually just seen the crash, Jack. Now that's coming up on the exit of Sandy up Beau Rivage. Yeah, that is horrendous. For one of those drivers, I don't want to say this. I'm actually going to share my screen right now with you guys. I know that some of the listeners might find this a little bit distressing.
Okay, right. I'm just going to put out what I'm literally just going to add. Charlie, keep it on. I'm just going to add it to the stream. If you are sensitive to this kind of stuff, just look away for the next 3 seconds.
Apologies there with having some internet issues. Yeah, that is what that's the crash from the Formula Regional Alpine Monaco 2021 Race 2 series there for you. Is literally, I can say that photograph there is why we have the halo in motorsport.
It certainly is, Charlie. It's kind of one of those, isn't it, where you think, actually, let's just get a picture up of Leclerc's image now. Let me just get that up, Charles Leclerc. Because what we're going to do is we're going to try and identify some of the damage to
this is the drive shaft of Leclerc's car, I think, that had the damage from Saturday.
Okay, right. So I've got an image up. If I can get it. No, I haven't got an image up.
Yeah, that crash for Leclerc, Jack. Just to fill in on the listeners, I think we might have that actually up in a minute. We'll get the image up in a minute for the listeners. Just to confirm that there was a lot of damage that Leclerc had in qualifying, and ultimately the team struggled to fix it overnight.
Yeah. Right, I'm just trying to get it up.
Here we go. We've got the.
So let me get it up. Look,
there we go.
Look at that damage, Charlie.
Wow. I've never seen an F1 car like that. At Monaco at ages. The whole front end is literally smashed.
The whole front end, and what you can't see is the rear end. This is a better picture right here. You can see that rear right tire, Charlie, is pointing in the wrong direction.
The suspension's gone.
That's the suspension and the drive shaft in there. Is there any others? That's the other crashes. From an aerial view, look, you can see. So as you can see over there on the top right corner, there's a barrier that sticks out. That's what he's hit. He's gone straight on over that yellow curb thing in the middle there and into that barrier right there, Charlie. So it was a pretty nasty one for the Leclerc, wasn't it?
Yeah, just watching the crash, Jack. I mean, it's clear that Leclerc's crash was nothing short of a bit nasty. But yeah, he was lucky to get out of that one. Albeit, obviously, had lots of damage, and it was inevitable that we all thought he wasn't going to race last weekend.
Had they have replaced the drive shaft, isn't normally something they would check. It's not normally something they'd expect to break. They check the gearbox. Does it just go to show, Charlie, that the drive shafts should also be checked as well?
Yeah, certainly. I think the drive shaft withstood the force of an impact there.
Okay, right. And off of Formula One now, Charlie. It's a very big weekend for motorsport. For any motorsport fan, this is a big weekend because at 5:45, Charlie, on Sunday, the 500-mile race at this iconic venue, the Brickyard. the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Yes, that's right. The Indy 500 will get underway at 5:45 in the UK with, I believe, Scott Dixon will be leading them away down to that turn one, Charlie. You're plummeting down there. Speeds of over nearly 240 miles an hour. What is going through your mind? You've got that first flick to the left, and they do it Noah's Ark formation rolling start in IndyCar. You don't know where that other driver is going to be. You're turning in. You're hoping that they're not going to be there.
Yeah, I must admit, I have released a YouTube video on that. So you can go and check that out on my YouTube channel about the Indy Indianapolis 500, the starting grid for that event. But with the Indy 500, in regards to the event, yes, it's going to be challenge, Jack. The first corner there, very fast. If you get it wrong there, you could be right at the scene of an accident. Alex Palou demonstrated that last weekend in qualifying, going off at over 230 miles per hour and smashing his car up.
Yeah, that was quite a scary one actually, Charlie. Very similar to the Sebastian Bourdais one a few years ago. He managed to get it at that right angle that it didn't flip over effectively. We've seen a few big crashes at IMS in the past. Hopefully we're not going to get one this weekend. It is one of the highest crash circuits, I think, in motorsport, so it's quite high.
Very fast.
It's very fast. Average speed, Charlie, in qualifying was about 232 miles an hour. So incredibly quick. The aero screen in IndyCar, second year running in the Indy 500, the aero screen. We've got some British drivers involved as well, Charlie. Max Chilton qualifying for the race as well.
Max Chilton, Jack Harvey, another one. He's had a difficult year, Jack Harvey. Good result at St. Petersburg. I think there's another driver as well who I forgot who he is. But there is 3 British drivers that are going to be racing in the Indy 500. Also as well, a former F1 veteran, Juan Pablo Montoya, is going to be racing this weekend as well in the Indianapolis 500.
Yes, you're right. Indy 500, Juan Pablo Montoya. He's known for some great things in F1, isn't he, Charlie? Can he go on and do wonders in IndyCar? Lando Norris, interestingly, today, Charlie, said he would like to apply for the Indy 500 next year with Arrow McLaren SP.
Really? I didn't know Norris was interested in the Indy 500. That's a big race for him because that's 200. That's a 200 of mile an hour circuit. You're turning left, and I mean, to be honest with you, you got to look at Jim Clark in the 1960s. He went there on his rookie start and finished second in 64 and then won it a year later in 65, and he dominated that. So I feel like Lando Norris could be, well, the next Jim Clark for Formula One rookies in an IndyCar.
He could, Charlie, couldn't he? And can we just say, congratulations, Romain Grosjean, on taking your first IndyCar pole just 6 months after a near fatal crash, and for 30 seconds, pretty much everyone on this planet thought that Roman would not be walking away from that. Obviously, we're super happy that he did. Charlie, this week I thought we need to dedicate a couple of minutes to this incredible person, because this week, Charlie, on Tuesday, it was announced by F1 that we lost one of our cameramen over the Monaco Grand Prix weekend. Formula One have issued a statement on this saying the cause of his death is yet unknown. But we send, Charlie, all of our best wishes to the cameraman's family. We don't believe it was anything to do with the circuit, but it was it may have been a natural cause, but a full investigation will be launched by the FIA as to exactly what happened and why it happened.
Yes, and also, Jack, on this podcast as well tonight, this evening, I'd like to dedicate a minute as well to pay tribute to Max Mosley, who died at the age of 81. He was such an incredible gentleman, controversial figure in F1, obviously, but he used to be the president of the FIA and also helped form the pinnacle of the grassroots of F1 with Bernie Ecclestone.
Actually, that's what I was going to come on to next, Charlie. Obviously, that was incredibly sad news on Monday. When we got that in, Charlie, he represented the sport so well, and he changed it for the better. He was a great guy, if he did, he missed he was a team manager, team owner, I think, with Bernie Ecclestone at one point. He, as you said, FIA president, Charlie. He oversaw the Black Weekend in Formula One with Roland Ratzenberger and Ayrton Senna. He improved the safety of the sport, Charlie, so much, and he had an influence of developing the halo as well. So yeah, really going to miss Max Mosley. But obviously, Charlie, we send our best thoughts and our best prayers to Max's family. Max's family, Charlie, did unfortunately receive some racial abuse online, which Formula One does not condemn. As you may know, Max's father did have something to do with Nazis. That's all we're going to say, but it doesn't dispute, Charlie, of what a great guy Max Mosley was.
Yeah, I forget. I mean, to be honest with you, I won't go political with this, but to be honest with you, he changed the safety of that sport after the death of Senna and Ratzenberger in '94 at San Marino Grand Prix. Formula One had to have change. The cars needed to be made safer. The survival cell had to be strengthened. The cockpit had to be redesigned. I really think Max Mosley was the man who integrated all this in, and without him, Formula One wouldn't have been like this the way it would be today.
And it was Charlie. He was a fantastic guy. The drivers engaged with him, didn't they? The drivers all loved him.
He was such an icon to the Formula One. I feel like he was part of the F1 family for so long as well.
He was, Charlie. Right, just before we end this stream, because we've nearly hit the half an hour mark already, we also, Charlie, just wanted to say that Marcus Rashford, Charlie, a famous footballer who Lewis Hamilton knows very well, did receive, unfortunately, 70 racial slurs last night after he played a bad performance. We just wanted to say again, Charlie, that there's no room for racism in any kind of sport.
There isn't. I'm not going to go into Europa League final on this podcast. We're focusing on F1. But yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, it's clear that people should not be racially abused. I'm not going to go into my views on racism too much, but I just think people should be very careful in what they put on social media, especially against drivers like Lewis Hamilton, who is, of course, as you know, the only BAME driver on the grid at the moment. It's really important that we all respect these people very, very closely.
It is, Charlie. It is definitely. It's hard, isn't it? What do you do? And what do you do? It's kind of like I think I believe we need to continue to take the knee, and I think that's the way forward. I think, isn't it? To continue taking the knee, really.
I'm gonna have to. I'm not going to comment on that. Actually, I'm a little bit that one there was a little bit controversial. But I mean, to be honest with you, Formula One, some of the drivers will take the knee, some won't. It depends on their opinion, political views on this. But I think Formula One will continue having these anti-racism protests at most Grand Prix, I'd have thought.
Right. Thank you very much, Charlie. Been a very interesting half an hour conversation. We'll see you next Thursday at 8 p.m. for the F1 show. Until then, good night.